much. I have a fun little story to tell, and I'm thrilled to be standing here in Malaprops in Asheville with Roz Savage sitting in front of me and Deb and Michael sitting right over there. Last year, as you know, I rode my bike from San Diego to St. Augustine, and at the end of the ride, Deb and Michael are my very, very sweet best friends, and Michael wrote on my blog, if you want to read something fun now, since Lori's done with her adventure, and a lot of people read my blog, there's this friend of ours who's doing something pretty dramatic, and her name is Roz Savage, and she's getting ready to row her second section across the Pacific Ocean. And I thought, well, I was done with my adventure. I was frankly at wit's end about what to do with myself. So I started following Roz's blog, which was great. And on May 29th, I think you started that, left from Hawaii. Oh, sorry, May 25th. And started the, thanks, Roz. Left on that second leg of the three-legged crossing of the Pacific Ocean. And in the middle of that leg, at one point, her book, Rowing the Atlantic, was going to come out soon. And she put on her blog that she wanted to have a lot of pre-sales to get it up in its rankings. And so if you ordered, okay, wait, back up 1 second. One of the things she ate a lot were Larabars, which are these little protein bars. And she'd eaten so many of them, and she's very ecological. That's what this whole trip is about, these rows that she does. And she had this huge pile of Larabar wrappers, and she was trying to figure out what to do with them. So she said, okay, so the first 200 people to order my book, pre-order my book on Amazon, will get a Larabar wrapper laminated and signed by me. Well, very nice. But I live in Asheville, and I live where Malaprops is, and I wrote back and I said, well, I live in Asheville, and I love reading you, and I can't wait to get that book, and I want a signed Larabar wrapper, but I don't like Amazon, so I want to buy it from my independent bookstore, Malaprops, which is the publisher's book of, I just sort of went on and on. And she wrote back and said, well, we just don't have it set up that way. It's really keyed for Amazon. And I wrote back and said, well, I want the book and I want the so change your damn policy. Which she did. Say, look, here are all the people who've been to Malaprops, and Estelle, you should come to Asheville and you should come to Malaprops and talk about your book, because there's going to be a lot of people who want to meet you and come here. So I'm really, really, really happy that you're here, and just so that you feel really good about it. Here's a couple Larabar wrappers. Ladies and gentlemen, Roz Savage.
Be here in the famous Malaprops. Absolutely, Lori saying that I had to come here, but so many people say you need to go to Asheville, you need to go to Malaprops. It's the coolest town and the coolest bookstore in the whole world. So very, very happy to finally be here. Although I still have reservations about the weather in Asheville, based on my 7 hours so far being here. So I'd love to tell you a bit about my row across the Atlantic and what I've been doing since the Atlantic and what I plan to do in the future. So I've got a bit of a slideshow here, which I very nearly managed to break earlier, but hopefully we've got it working again. About the kind of path that I've been on. We had to lock my videos out of this because we didn't have sound, so I'm a little bit at sea about, okay, a little bit at sea. You're probably wondering what all these dudes are doing on the screen. Well, when I was growing up, I always wanted to have a big adventure. I loved reading those books about people who were sailing around the world or climbing mountains or trekking to poles, doing all this really cool stuff. But they all looked like this. And I obviously lacked one essential essential prerequisite for being an adventurer, which was the beard. That was how hard I tried. I couldn't get the beard out. There just didn't seem to be any women out there doing that kind of thing. So I had this sort of perception that you had to be not only male, but this kind of uber human who had these steely eyes and this square jaw and never felt a moment's fear as they, I don't know, managed to tape up their broken ankles with duct tape or whatever. So when I graduated from university, having allegedly read law, but in fact mostly having studied beer and rowing, which in fact has now stood me in much better stead, I did what most university graduates in 1989 wanted to do. We all wanted to be management consultants or merchant bankers, because Margaret Thatcher said that would be great, because then you could go and buy a really big house, get a really big mortgage, and have your sports car and all these materialistic things that were supposed to make us happy. So after 11 years of doing that, I moved into the really big house and just felt completely trapped. I thought, Margaret Thatcher, you sold me a complete dummy here. It was like a crisis of faith. Something that I had believed for so long was going to make me happy just wasn't working. So I realised that I was going to have to make some changes. But I didn't know what changes to make. I didn't know what I wanted out of life. I knew management consultancy was not it, but that still left quite a lot of scope. So I got increasingly desperate trying to find the answer to this question. I read self-help book after self-help book. I did a bit of therapy until I got so stressed about the cost of the therapy that it was really reluctant. Even as those of you who've read my book will know, I even had an affair in the hope that finding Mr. Right would make my life right, and very nearly ran off with Mr. Wrong instead. But what that made me realise, I reached that absolute trough where I was so ready to throw it all away. If I'd have run off with Mr. Wrong to a new country, I didn't think my parents, who were both Methodist preachers and really believed in the sanctity of marriage, would probably not have spoken to me again. My friends wouldn't have spoken to me. I would have lost my home, my husband, my security, my income, all in one fell swoop. That was a pretty low point. And from there on, pretty much anything I could salvage was to the good. A really formative moment in that soul-searching phase of my life was when I sat down one day and wrote two versions of my own obituary. The one that I wanted and the one that I was heading for at that stage. The one that I wanted, it wasn't so much about what I wanted to do, it was more the kind of person I wanted to be. And I wanted to be one of those cool people who seemed to fit many different lifetimes into one, and would just go out and try things just because it looked like fun. And they might succeed, or equally likely, they might fail spectacularly, but they would just pick themselves up and dust themselves off and try again. They just seemed to have this massive zest for life. And as I was writing that version of my obituary, I got really excited. My pen was flying across the paper and it felt really real to me. And then I wrote the obituary that I was actually heading for. And after about half a page, I got really bored and gave up. It was a nice enough life, but it just wasn't exciting. It wasn't rewarding, it wasn't fulfilling. And I looked at these two obituaries and thought, oh boy, I need to make some really big changes here. So like any truly courageous, intrepid life adventurer, I folded them up and shoved them in a drawer and tried to forget about them because I realised I was going to have to let go of so many things. But then after I'd reached that point where I was so desperate, I was actually willing to let all those things go. I became totally free from all those security blankets that I'd been stifling myself in for so long. And I was able to actually just, to mix my metaphors, jump out of the aeroplane and then start making my parachute. And some of my friends must have thought I was in total free fall, but in fact I just felt free to recreate myself as an adventurer without a beard. So I decided in a flash of